And it's like, because I struggle with, like a lot of the family boundary setting and just, feeling invisible in my own home, I often formed very toxic relationships with people because they saw me
Yeah.
and I'm being seen. And now I'm like overly trying to pour into these people. And so I developed this kind of weird, uh because I'm an acts of service person, now I want to serve you. Like anyone that does, like, oh, you're my boyfriend, you're my friend. How am I of service to you? How do I show up for you? Right.
Yeah.
And I never really cared too much about people, like the way in which I was doing and overly like showing up for other people's. I never necessarily needed them to do much in order to get that version of me. So as I again began to do work on myself, now I'm like, oh hell no, like
Yeah.
no,
You're
this
like,
is not.
I now require reciprocation.
Yeah, like this
that's
is
important.
Yeah, like this is, I have to, like, so I self reflect and I reevaluate my relationships very consistently. How are people pouring into me, and what relationships benefit and serve me, because I know that I'm gonna go above and beyond even in any type of relationship that I enter, regardless of the nature of the relationship, whether it be platonic, romantic, etc. I know who I am as a person, so I have to be very careful about the people that I invite into my space, because I am someone that whatever you give me, I will multiply it. I am a multiplier. I want anything that is near me or associated with me, I want it to be its best. Like, I work on myself. I want myself to be my best. Anybody that's around me, I want them to be their best as well. So it gets, discernment is so important when it comes to understanding the roles that people have in your life, and placing them accordingly, and saying like, you know what? I'm cool with that. You're over there. Cool with that.
We do a shot of you. We do a tumbler of you. We do.
Yes.
It's like having a measurement system.
I
It's
love
like,
that.
How much of this?
Yeah,
do
like,
we need?
I
Like
only
some friends,
need a
you just
double.
need a shot.
Yeah,
that is it.
Yeah,
And
I
then
don't
other
need
friends
nothing.
are like, I want the Weck jar that's like 36 ounces.
Like, I want to walk around with a gallon of you every day as my water.
Well, and I feel like nourishment is such a core value of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I sit with someone, I want them to feel like filled up and nourished, like deeply cared for when they leave my presence. Like, I want to leave a person, a room, a conversation, like better than I found it, like shiny and smooth, like better than I found it. And I expect the same in return. It's like, I know what I'm bringing, and so I expect that in return. Like, I want that back. I want to leave people feeling better than I felt when I showed up at the door. Like, I want to leave conversations feeling lighter and not heavier. Mm-hmm. And that's, we know life, but it's not sunshine and rainbows all the time.
Right.
But the energetic quality of leaving someone who makes you feel that you have a partner in that burden or in that overwhelm or in that darkness that's going on, versus like, I feel like I just got dumped on and left holding all of their weight and they just floated out of here.
Yeah, I had to stop being friends with people because I realized that they were dumping on me, and I'm like, this relationship genuinely does not serve me.
Yeah.
I don't like, I withdraw from this relationship. I withdraw from this conversation. I don't have the capacity to be your, dumping ground. Yeah. And I had to like keep seeing these patterns of like how much I'm willing to be there for other people. But then when I need someone, it's like, I don't really trust you like that to even enter in those conversations, because trust is huge for me to open up. So that was like a really good BTS conversation because that is not the actual.
That is not what we came to talk about.
Yes, that's not the actual topic for today.
Although motherhood is involved.
Yes.
Sure is.
And also all of these things have a impact on how you show up.
Yeah.
Like in
it's
any
all connected. I know you say that just as much as I do. Like, when we're sitting with clients and we're talking about sex, whatever the thing that they're there for, it's like whatever is happening in the bedroom is a symptom of whatever's going on in all the other rooms of the house. So everything touches.
Everything is connected.
That's why we use that lens.
Yes, yes, for sure. So I know that at least along my journey, when I started the podcast before becoming a certified sexologist. There was not that much of a period between me becoming a podcaster and becoming a certified sexologist, only because when I realized that my subject matter was sex, I wanted to be very responsible in my conversations around sex. So I knew that I did not want to be another podcaster talking about sex just because I have sex. That is not the angle that I wanted to come from. I wanted to come from one of education, one of anthropology. I wanted to take my studies and actually apply them to the world. I wanted to come from a perspective of philosophy, of history, of socialization. I wanted all of those to ring in everything that I said when it comes to sex. So set out on the journey to become a sexologist, and what I realized was that it was what I had been, like, it was the missing piece. Like, I love it so much. Like, I'd already loved sex so much, but then just becoming more educated and certified, and to this day I still study. I'm always growing my my tools and my resources and my knowledge so that I can share that with people. But I really wanted to be a responsible sex educator. So, of course, I'm entertaining. I crack jokes and things are funny. Sex is funny sometimes. You even laugh during. But
or you should. If you don't, you're missing out.
Yeah, like, I love a good giggle in between. Like,
oh my God. I had a queef that lasted for like a minute straight the other night, and I was dying. And like, hilarious. The more I would laugh, the louder the queef would get. And my husband was like, we were cracking up. And I had one of my best friends was like sleeping in our guest room, and I was like, I don't know how great these walls are, but like, she's
did you heard a rumble?
What the hell are they doing in there? We laughed for so long, and I was like, okay. And then when it was all out, I was like, carry on.
Right.
Back to the hot things.
Right. Like, you're not finished here, buddy. That is hilarious. But we're gonna get into a lot of interesting things on today's episode. Welcome to Her Nut Matters, the podcast that dives headfirst into all things sex, pleasure, and empowerment. I'm Jody, your unapologetic guide to a more liberated sex life. Here we break down taboos, celebrate sexuality, and explore what it means to truly own your pleasure. So whether you're curious, kink-friendly, or just looking for ways to spice things up, you're in the right place. Now let's get to it. I'm super excited. So this is one of the initial episodes of the rebrand. So what is previously known as Provocative is now called Her Nut Matters.
Ooh.
And this is one of those initial episodes.
Am I a nutter?
So welcome to another episode of Her Nut Matters, and all my little nutty buddies in the audience. I would like you to give a warm welcome to today's guest. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself and tell her about all of the amazing sexual, sexy things that she does. So go ahead.
Well, thank you for having me, Nutter Butters. I'm Christin Henke. I am a certified sex coach, sex educator, and also a somatic experiencing practitioner. So I think very similarly to you, I made my way into sex coaching from a place of feeling really passionate about sex, loving sex, feeling like I was the friend in the group that was constantly, I had people texting me and sending me voice memos, like emergent voice memos from the bathroom, and like asking me questions that I just was unabashedly, like, I had no qualms about going and finding out. I was like, oh, I haven't done that, but let me check. Like, I'll like poll real quick and figure it out, and I'll get you an answer, right?
Right.
And I loved being able to be a resource, but also being a safe space where nobody felt judged by me. They felt like they could ask me about anything. You know, they're like, oh my God, I think I'm going to try anal. What do I need to do? And I was like, well, if you don't know the Q-tip trip, then you need to try it. Like, you need to make sure that there's no show before you go in there, right? Mm-hmm. And just feeling like people were really comfortable, and safety was a really big deal. Mm-hmm. And so there was an emotional safety component that I was really aware of.
Yeah.
And that really laid the foundation for the work that I'm doing now. And as people came in, I realized they would come for very specific things. You know, I want to feel more empowered. I want to be more in touch with my body. There's libido disparity. I want to feel more desire. I want to know more tricks. I want to, you know, feel confident performing. I want all these different things. And we would start working through the tangible ways to do that. And there would be a moment where they would say, so I went home and this was my intention and I was excited and it got right up to the moment and I froze. Or I had an experience I wasn't expecting, or I started crying inconsolably and I don't know what the fuck that was about. And there was all these things happening. And so 6, you know, sessions in, it's like, oh, when I was 15, this happened and I never told anyone. Mm-hmm. And that was over and over and over. And I was like, I am not equipped to serve these people unless I understand how to support the underlying unnamed trauma that is so often holding people back from feeling safe in their body, from feeling like they can express who they are sexually and otherwise. And that was the piece that was missing. And so I went back to school again, did 3.5 years and over 230 hours to become a somatic experiencing practitioner. And now that's my primary modality. And for anyone who doesn't know what somatic experiencing is, it's a body-based therapeutic modality. It's bottom-up processing. It is working through the physiology of our bodies and our self-protective responses and all of these things versus like cognitive processing. And I do that, but I use the lens of sex. So I basically support the sexual education and the desire to be more fully embodied and sexually expressed by creating the circumstances for wonderful sex and authentic expression to happen, by creating safety, by helping people understand what is blocking them, what is holding them back, what is making them feel small, and what keeps them from reaching for more in-depth kind of expression and connection, and working it from kind of that angle.
Yeah. Similarly with myself, I had been working through a lot of different things that I talked about previously on the Provocative podcast. I talked about, you know, being molested as a child. I talk about feeling unseen in certain spaces, how I overcompensated for or overshowed up, over-delivered in so many different relationships that did not serve me in, you know, little to any capacity. So understanding that, and then, you know, becoming a coach myself and studying and working through my own trauma and being honest and documenting that the complete way. Like literally as I was learning things about myself in real time, I'm being super vulnerable, and then I'm jumping on the episode and saying like, hey, by the way. And also I think also because I've always been super comfortable, and not always, because I think people think that I was way more comfortable than I actually was with talking about these things, because I'm saying it and they're like, oh, well, there's not really much of any emotion behind what you're saying, or you're cracking a joke about it. Yeah, trauma response.
Like, that is called undercoupling, and I don't allow myself to feel what is there, and that's how I can say it. That's how I can override. It's an override setting.
Exactly. And I'm like, I didn't understand that I had literally my whole life, I had kind of programmed myself to deal with a lot of things that way. So instead of, you know, just like feeling the emotions, I'm like, nope. Don't feel anything, won't feel anything. I don't allow myself to feel it in this moment. So I'll feel it later, and I'll actually schedule when I'll feel it. Like it's to the point where I've compartmentalized my feelings to where it's like, nope, not gonna feel that today. I'll pencil you in for Tuesday.
Sit at home Tuesday night and eat a carton of Ben and Jerry's and watch a really sad movie and wring
cry.
It all out.
And
then I'm gonna pick it up and I'm gonna go on.
Yeah, but then it also, like, you know, just in terms of like the patterns that I had with, like, all right, everything will be fine with like me with my family, and then something will make me go off on everybody. Like, and I was to the point where I would schedule arguments. Like I
need to have a confrontation.
I cannot make this up. Like, I would get super confrontational. Like, if I get into it with one person, I'm like, who else in my phone? Gotta get it. Like, everyone gets it that day. Like, all right, I'm getting into it with you. I'm getting into it with you. We ain't talking in 6 weeks. I'm getting into it with you. Like, I have done this. And then I'm like, oh, I feel better. Like, I would get all of that off my chest and I would sleep like a baby. And it's like, I should not be in a position to where I have to boil over like that. So, you know, like, I had to kind of work through that. And the reason that we're talking about things like this is because, like we said earlier, the way you do one thing is probably how you do other things, especially as it relates to your sex, right? Yeah. So I think about, like, even like my sexual patterns. I will emotionally, if I get into it, like if I have like a really bad argument with someone, or not recently, like this was the version of me before I started the podcast, before I became a sex coach. There were times where I would get into bad arguments with my family, and then I would go through my phone and find, like, all right, cool, who haven't I had sex with in a while? I'm gonna fuck you tonight. Like, and it's like, that has nothing to do with anything. Like, I'm not dealing with the argument the real bad argument I just had with my brother. I'm like, all right, cool, me and my brother just had an argument. I'm gonna go get my nipples pierced. Like, what? That is not a. Why is that my response?
Like, because the physiology, that stress response, like that self-protection response or impulse that emerges to fight, to flee, to freeze, whatever, it has to go somewhere, right? And so it's like, okay, you know, I'm going to fight with you as much as I can. Then I'm going to flee the scene. And then I'm going to go fuck somebody, which might feel a lot like fighting, or it might be the only tolerable way I can reconnect and try to come back down after all of that. And that is really common. That happens a lot. You know? And I think when we think about patterns, like, I'm someone who, when I am stressed or when I am going through something really hard, I would rather connect with you physically. I would rather fuck it out than I would, like, sit down and talk about how
because
sad
it's like,
I'm
oh my
feeling,
God, I don't know how to I don't even know the words to use.
And
how am I supposed to tell you what I'm feeling if I don't fucking know? I don't know what this feels like. I just don't like it. And so my response is like, I don't want to, you know, more recently, I definitely will say that, like, even when I'm super emotional, I still won't talk about it in the moment because I still need time to process it. So I'll calm down and I'm like, let me process this and then revisit it. But we could definitely still fuck for now, because we're not gonna.
Because I can compartmentalize that.
I can compartmentalize.
I actually know how to do that. Well, and that was something that, it's so interesting because, kind of going back to where we started, like, I grew up in the South, in the Bible Belt, purity culture, evangelical extremism, like the whole nine. So had a True Love Waits convention, purity ring, like all that stuff. And I from a very young age was like, pretty sure this is bullshit. Like, pretty sure this does not resonate. Like, I remember being given a book called I Kissed Dating Goodbye by a guy who has since literally renounced the book and apologized to everyone he helped traumatize when he wrote it, as a 21-year-old evangelical virgin who had not even had sex. And I remember reading it, and his big thing was like, oh, you know, saving your kiss, like your first kiss for the altar. And I remember closing it and being like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to do that. I'm like, I might not have sex, but I'm definitely going to kiss somebody.
Right.
And that evolved from like, well, I might not have anal, but I'm definitely going to have sex. And then, you know, like, it just continued on. So I left the home, left the church, left religion, all of that stuff around the same time. And I went on what I called my sexual liberation tour. And that was wonderful for me. However, you know, I grew up in this sexually repressed environment, and that was coming from absolute terror. Like, I had a parent who was chronically and violently, like, sexually abused for years and years and years and years, and it wasn't ever resolved in like a meaningful way until much later, in terms of renegotiation and proper support. And so that loomed over my entire childhood. And so there was very much this, like, there's rapists in the bushes, like, all the time. Like, all men are predators, maybe women too. Everyone's a predator. Everyone is in danger of, all the time. And there's two ways that could go, right? Either completely collapsed and shut down and I'm not interested at all, or I'm like, what the fuck is all the fuss about? And also, like, that ain't gonna be me. And that was my response. And so when I started my sexual liberation tour, I was like, I am not the victim here. Like, I am the heel-wearing hellraiser who goes in and is like, you're coming home with me. Like, drag them out by their ties. And like, really, I was the aggressor. Like, I embodied this kind of powerful, like, archetype, of seductress, siren, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that was very necessary. That was a necessary part of my process. But at the same time, when I look back on that as an adult who has had a lot of healing since then, there were probably men, like, who I hurt because I was so intent, like, you're not going to take advantage of me. You are not going to pull one over on me. So, like, I will be the one who uses and leaves. I will be the one who, who gets in and gets out.
Yeah.
And so it was an interesting kind of, like, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but just a role reversal where like, I'm not going to be the women from my lineage who were, trampled over by men and used. It's like, this is my power and I decide how to use it and I get to wield this. And sometimes I wielded it very sharply.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't start my sexual liberation, aka hoe phase, until I was 30. So I felt like I had missed out on so much because of my very weird relationship to sex. And I use the word weird in the sense of me feeling like, okay, as a teenager, I was like, all right, virginity, sex, not that big of a deal, but that was also because I'd been sexually abused. So it's like, this means zero to me. Like, after that, like,
too late for me. Like,
this doesn't mean much of anything to me. So when it came down to like the first person I had sex with, I was 14. He was 18. And it's like 14 and 18 psychologically.
That's a big developmental difference.
That is a big difference. But, and it's like, okay, in the, back then I'm like, oh, it's fine. Doesn't matter. But no, like, even like now I'm like, oh my fucking God.
Well,
like,
there's a power dynamic there, right? And you're like, I can see now that was inappropriate. And that was maybe not totally consensual because I didn't understand what that was. Like, I didn't understand the parameters of consent.
No, and it's like, like it was consensual in the sense that like, all right, cool, I'm like signing up for this, but it was consensual. It was non-consensual in the sense that I genuinely did not understand what was so I'll say this, my consent was taken from me way before I had the opportunity to exercise consent. And I think that happens with a lot of people. You think like, oh, okay, I'm consenting to this act with this person as a teenager, but if you do not genuinely understand what consent is because you think that you don't have the right to exercise consent, you're not really you're not using consent for what it's supposed to be used for.
If you say yes because you showed up to this cute guy's house, and now you're here and you feel like you have to say yes and deliver because you came here and he's expecting you to, right? Like, that's such a common thing. Teenage girls, where it's like,
for sure.
Oh, well, I came here, and if I don't, like, I don't know what will happen, right? Like, and you might be called dick tease, you might be shamed, you might be there might be something worse than that. But it's like, I think the fear of like, oh, I came all this way and now they're expecting it, and so I have to follow through.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
For
like,
sure.
I think that happens a lot.
Yeah, it definitely happens a lot. That was not my case.
Yes.
That was not my case, personally. My situation was, it's a boy across the street. He say he like me. I'm going to go across the street and have sex with this 18-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And again, I'm 14. I'm about to be 15. This boy had a baby. So you got baby. I'm 14, about to sign up for some baby mama drama, like, cause I want to go across the street and freak on this boy because I don't care about what this idea of, like, oh, my body did not mean anything to me. So because it didn't mean anything, it was easy for me. Like, all right, I like him enough. This is gonna happen. Yeah. And afterwards, like, even when we, like, cause we continued to have sex for about 8 months. It meant nothing. Like, there was genuinely nothing behind it. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, something to do.
I'm bored. Like, and sex became something to do because I was bored. However, it was something to do when I was bored, but you still had to be my boyfriend first. Yes. So I'm battling with this idea that it's like, all right, I'm going to do this because I'm...
propaganda, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this is how we contain it and make it okay.
Exactly. Like, I'm not a hoe because I'm still doing it with my boyfriend. Right. So we did that for about 8 months until we broke up. Then I found a new boyfriend like maybe a year later, and then it was like, all right, cool, like, and that person ended up becoming my daughter's father. And it was very like, all right, now I'm 16 at the time and we're dating, and I became his wife. Like, we're walking to class together and we're spending all our weekends together and we're buying each other matching Jordans and all this other, like, overly possessive ass weird teenage shit.
This into the only template that any of us has.
Yeah. Right? So and I dealt with that, and then when we had our first breakup, and I was like, oh my God, like, now what am I gonna do? It took me a long time to have sex with somebody after that.
You're like, woo, divorce at 17 is hard. You know?
It was crazy because we didn't have our first breakup until I want to say I was 19. Okay. So yeah, like, I'm like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I'm going through this. Right, we were supposed to get married, right? Yeah. And we broke up, and I started to begin to take notice to two particular guys that I worked with at Target. Ooh. And Target them red shirts. But it was funny because we all showed, like, we all started working at Target at the exact same time. And I'm like, okay. And then we became, like, really good friends. But it was also funny because, like, again, I was still struggling with this, like, oh no, you're supposed to keep your body count low and stuff like that. Cause I'm like, yeah. And so I'm still dealing with, like, I don't want to be a hoe, but I kind of want to, like, I kind of like this person, but you're not my boyfriend. And I ended up getting back with my ex that we had broke up. So we had broke up. He had went away to college, so he was not even in Chicago anymore. And then we ended up getting back together while he was gone, and I ended up cheating technically because I kind of freaked on those
it's a lot of air quotes.
Yeah, like
what happened?
So I'll tell you the bullshit logic that I came up with my head, right? I came up with conditions on, like, if we don't finish, we didn't have sex.
Oh, this is like Mormon soaking, right? This is like sticking it in and having somebody, like, shake the bed, Like, we didn't participate, right? Like, we didn't actually do
That was my logic. I swear to God, that was my logic. So in my head, I'm like, okay.
But that's what morality teaches you to do.
Yeah.
It's morality is just loopholes for all yo-holes. That's all.
Yes. Like, so I'm like, okay, cool. If you put it in me, but you don't move, we're not having sex for real.
Not ecstatic or that fun, then I guess it's really
when I tell you, looking back, I know that boy hated me. I'm sure he hates me. Like, he hates me because why was I putting him through that? I was putting him through it because I didn't want to be a hoe. And so I was not ready to live out my whole raps.
I know a lot of people might already know this. When did you just, like, embrace being a hoe? Because I also want to say that you can be married and have children and still be a hoe.
Very much so. I didn't embrace it until I was intentional with, okay, I'm going to try this on for size. I'm going to, like, really do it this time. Yeah. And I didn't really do that until I turned 30. So I struggled with this shit for years, guys. So I'm like, I don't want to be a hoe.
But you made it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
So
goodness.
the fact that I was doing that is insane. So like I had I had this, it's funny because like even when me and this one guy, again, like I'm like, all right, cool. You could put it in, but you better not stroke me.
Yeah.
Don't stroke
You better not touch me at the same time. You better not.
No, like literally, like and he like I'm like, no, you don't, you stop. You stop.
Oh my God, look.
So that was
ex-evangelical. I cut my teeth on playing just the tip, right? Like it, there's that, I don't know if you remember, there was this YouTube video that went viral that was called Fuck Me in the Ass Because I Love Jesus. Because like the back door doesn't count. Like as long as you do it in the asshole, this is fine.
Right.
Vaginal sex, not cool. But if you do it in the ass, you're A-okay, right?
Yeah, you're still a
in the
virgin.
Lord's book,
Right.
anyway, you're fine. So like that kind of reasoning was always. So similarly, it was like, okay, like we're going to make out and we're going to take off all of our clothes and we're going to put everything against each other, but we're not going to insert it. Or if we do, we're only going to insert it until the like point of tension and then back out. Like just get out.
What's super crazy is so just the tip, guys, and I've said this before, is shallowing.
Yes.
Shallowing feels so fucking good. It feels so good because it's stimulating the bulbs of the clitoris, and it feels so
it's actually great. And like we now, as grown in our 30s, like we are shallowing on purpose now.
I'm doing that shit. It's like, wait, don't go all the way in. Stay right there, and just like kind of
right there, like. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
But there were all of these little like moral limbo things that we were trying to do where, then eventually, I mean, this is how
I still do the moral limbo. I think I don't want to let it go. I really don't want to let it go. Like I recently had a situation where me and this person said like, we're not going to have sex anymore. And then we had sex. And then right after, was like, we're so glad we're not having sex anymore. Like, well, not at this fucking moment. Yeah. But I like now it's gotten to a point where it's like, all right, I like kind of like bending like the rules.
The rules.
Yeah, like
of what is.
Yeah. Now it's become kinky.
Or what is
like
decent or reasonable, or but I think a slightly different part of that was coming out of all of this religious, kind of grandiosity and being like, I'm going to figure out, like, I'm going to live life by my own rules. Like, I'm not pretending like there's an omniscient third looking down on me, constantly judging everything I do. And, like, I'm done with that. I'm not doing that. And going off and trying to figure out where my own moral code was, like what it was and where it was. And I would be like, oh, I'm going to have sex, but only with people that I really like, or and then very quickly I was like, yeah, no, I don't think so. I think one night stands are fine. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna do one night stands, and that's cool. And then the one night stand would be really good, and it would turn to 3 night stands, and I was like, shit, this is like not.
You're doing it wrong.
Not working. Like, what is going on? And then it was like, okay, well, I can fuck whoever I want, but I will never ever have sex with a married man because that is wrong, right? And I still, there was a time, guess what? There was a time where eventually I did that. And the thing and 2 of them, I still swear by. 1 of them, not proud of. There's 1 I would redo if I could, but the other 2 I wouldn't take back. And that's all circumstantial, guys. Like it's all got stuff, But the thing that was so important about those types of experiences is that each time I kind of like set this rule based on, how I grew up and all of these things, and then blew through it, I got more and more in touch with like my basest like humanity in a way that I wasn't allowed that I wasn't allowed to do. Like I experienced all this shame for literally doing fucking nothing for years. And then I was like, oh, this is like healthy shame where you do something really shitty and then you feel remorse. Like this is supposed to happen.
Yeah, like how I'm feeling shame, I ain't did shit yet.
Right. But that was crucial. And I think that those types of experiences where I did cross a line, even with myself, and I felt remorse and I was like, ooh, like that feels really bad. Like that feels really shitty. What happened then is I stopped judging people. Like, it took me off of that high horse that I was on. I didn't want to be on it, but I was on it. And when I fell off, I was like, oh shit, like, I'm not going to judge anybody. Like, you don't know what anyone's story is. You don't know what the conditions were of that situation. Like, you hear stuff all the time and you make a snap judgment about her and him and her and her and like who's doing what. And I'm like, the truth is, you don't ever know. You don't know what's going on inside of that marriage. You don't know what's going on with this person. You don't know.
Yeah.
And that's where I think I learned such a valuable lesson about having grace, like for myself, but also for other people. And there's no way I would have made it into this profession without that. Like, to be non-judgmental is one of the basic tenets of safety, right?
Yeah, I used to be so fucking judgy. When I see my Facebook memories sometimes, I have to hurry up and delete that shit because I don't want that shit to keep popping up every year. It will, like it will tell you, like, and oh my God, I remember this. Like, I was so judgy, and I'm like, not I'm judging the hoes because they got enough balls to be hoes, and I secretly want to be a hoe, but I'm like, oh my God, I'm so much better than you guys because I'm not a hoe.
Yeah. Moral superiority is typically just like jealousy.
That's exactly what it is.
Like, those we are judging, we are very uncomfortable with their capacity to do, dabble, or embody something that we want for ourselves.
Yeah, it's like, why am I mad because you using your coochie the way you using it? It's not even mine. Like,
somebody else's yum, okay? But either that or it rubs up against our moral code that we are not entirely we're not entirely clear on, and it makes us uncomfy, and it's hard to be able to just sit with, like, this is their life and their coochie, and this is your life and your coochie.
Yeah.
You don't need to get involved.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to.
Yes.
Stay on other people's coochies.
I was so
invited you.
Yes, and I was so happy when I got to the point where I mined my own coochie because I feel like people, when you got to think about, like, when you are putting energy into minding other people's shit, you ain't got shit going on for yourself. And you can't possibly be taking care of yours if you worried about mine. Yeah. So once I kind of like had that mindset shift of like, no, I genuinely only care about my proper pussy management. Yeah. Once I'm cool here. Like, I don't really care too much about what other people are doing with theirs because I know mine's is straight because I pour all my energy into making sure that she's straight. And I definitely think that what's also interesting about that is because it's not always the people that are super loud about judging you as well. Because some people be super quiet, super silent. Yeah, and
the silent judgers.
Yeah, the
you
silent,
can just feel it.
Yeah, it's like the silent judges are insane too, because, or not even like, they're silent because they know that they did the shit and they can't own that they did the shit, right? And so the judgment really comes through the fact that you are unapologetically loud about the shit that you do versus them feeling like, I don't have the courage to stand in my shit. Yeah. And so I know, like, even when it comes to me and how vocal I am, I think that people receive what I say just because they know, like, look, ain't nobody just getting on this show and saying all this crazy shit if they not actually living it, because I would never say this to people out loud. Yeah. But me, I'm like, I've gotten to a place where I felt so much shame growing up for years. And I'm saying growing up all the way into 30. I'm barely grown, y'all. I'm barely grown in my 33 years. I'm barely there. But I felt so much shame for so long to the point where now I don't feel ashamed of any fucking thing. Like, there's nothing you can, like, anything that I do, I feel no type of shame behind it because I'm like, what you gonna do? Like,
you know, it's really interesting because I feel like definitely in my 20s and pre having a baby, I think I was very much there in terms of like, I started a podcast too at one point and talked about sex, and like I was the brazen, brassy, like she'll say anything, like you can say anything to her. And I loved that. I welcome that. And it is interesting, and it's been interesting for me to just witness within myself after my daughter was born. And I would say even more as she's getting to be school age. She's like 4.5, almost 5 now. So we're like heading into kindergarten territory now. And I had this experience of me being this sexual, open, shameless woman. Like, shameless woman's kind of my thing. Like, you know, I'm like,
Yeah.
And then having the overlay of like the societal expectations on motherhood.
Oh, babe.
Not like I don't subscribe to them. I don't play by them. I don't do any of that. But like moving from the city to like the suburbs in the Midwest and being surrounded by a version of motherhood that looks very similar for a lot of people. And it's very contrasting to my version of motherhood, right? And so being able to kind of witness the discomfort that I do feel sometimes where I'm like, oh, like, okay, is this like it? Are you not going to be, am I not going to have friends like because of this? Am I going to be kind of ousted because of this? Is like, I didn't really experience that, you know, until this point. And I think it's just finding my way through like, how do I hold on to, and I'm like practicing and living this in the moment,
right?
Of like not watering myself down, not diluting myself, not, you know, sanding off the edges of my sexuality and my expression and my authentic embodiment because, you know, my environment, people are a lot more conservative, shut down, like, you know, like I feel it, and it's not something I'm used to. Like for such a long time, I think I was like, let the freak flag fly, and like I did not care, and I truly like I didn't feel it. Yeah. And sometimes I feel a little uncomfy at times, and I'm like, am I doing the right thing by everybody, by my husband, by my daughter? And like I have those thoughts, and I have to sit with them and come back to this place of like, everyone is on their own journey, and like what is still true and authentic for me is that I want to model to my daughter my multifaceted personhood. Like I don't want her to be like, oh, my mom, I never thought of my mom as a sexual person. You know, it's like I never thought of my mom as like being an individual. I never thought of my mom as having needs, right? Like because we become these like oatmeal cardigan draped like beings who are very like the martyrdom, right? Like my mother modeled like being a martyr, sacrificing everything. Yeah, like for the children. Yeah,
you become a mother, and then you sacrifice your sexuality for motherhood.
But then the resentment and the pain and the grief, that child didn't ask you to have them, and that child certainly didn't ask you to lay down your life to give them a lesser version of you, or a less vibrant, less fulfilled, less present, less happy version of yourself. Like no one asked for that. And in my experience, no one benefits from that. Yeah. And so when I'm feeling uncomfy, I remember that and put my tits out and just keep on moving because
they're nice tits.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for noticing. Because I want her to grow up knowing that if she chooses to do motherhood, that doesn't mean that she's not a whole person. It doesn't mean that she can't go out and write books, have a career, talk about sex, you know, express herself however she wants. Like motherhood does not have to look one way. Yeah. And so I just, you know, I try to keep wearing that.
Me and my daughter's father recently had like a bit of a disagreement because I have not hidden the fact that I'm a sexologist from our daughter. Yeah. He very specifically said, I don't think she should know what you do. And I was like, I think she has every right to know what I do because
it's not dirty and it's not shameful. So we don't hide things that aren't dirty or shameful.
And I tell her that all the time. Yeah. I'm like, sweetheart, you know that I'm not ashamed of what I do, right? Yeah. And she is comfortable talking to me about anything. That is not the dream. That is the dream. Like I literally know that I'm doing a good job being transparent and being, you know, like transparent. Right. Like, of course, it's age appropriate transparency, right? Yes. So I tell her things in a way that she understands, and she, you know, like she knows what masturbation is. She knows that, and when two people have sex, these are the things that could possibly result from that. And she understands that not only boys are supposed to carry condoms, anyone that wants to practice healthy sexual practices should be carrying condoms. So I have these conversations with her as much or as little as needed, but he was like, I don't think she should know. And I was like, I think she should, because why would I hide this from her? If she has any sexual questions, who should she come to with those questions? You want her to go to the internet? Go to her friends?
Right.
What?
Go to porn?
What do you
the worst educational tool of all time?
Yeah, I'm like, no, she's not gonna do that. She's going to come to me, and I know she's gonna come to me because there was definitely a situation. I was like in my room cleaning, and she's like, "Mommy, can I ask you a question?" And I'm like, "Of course." She's like, "What do you do with the rose?"
Yeah,
and I was like.
You're like, well, for right now, I was just release the tension from your neck with it, and then one day.
So I'll tell you how I responded. But see, I like to ask at least like one or two probing questions to know what you
do. What do you think it's for? Right?
That's exactly. I'm like, I'm very much an answer question with a question, and I might add answers with two questions.
Don't project anything onto their question.
Exactly.
That baby who's like, Mom, where do babies come from? And you're like, well, when a man and a woman love each other. And then I'm like, oh, that's a great question. What made you think about that? Well, so-and-so's cat's having kittens. And I was like, well, shoot. Okay.
Right. So let's explain from that.
That's a very different conversation.
Exactly. So she was like, what do you do with the rose? I was like, well, what do you think you do with the rose? She's like, do you stick it inside you? I'm like, God, no.
You're like,
no, you don't stick it inside of you.
You're like, girl, if it don't have an anchor on it, don't put it in there.
I'm like, no, sweetheart, you don't stick it inside of you. I said, I'm like, the rose toy vibrates, and you can stimulate different parts of your body, and you receive pleasure from that.
And it feels nice on lots of different things.
I'm like, look, you might want, like maybe on your nipples. I don't know. Like there are different sensitive parts of your body, and you're gonna want to pleasure those. So, and that's how I explained it to her. And it was fine. It's like, all right, cool, I get it. That's age appropriate for a 12-year-old, especially.
She's already.
Yeah, like
she's already touching. She's already figuring that stuff out.
Exactly. So, and I love that she feels comfortable enough to, again, ask me that, because I don't want her to be like, oh, well, let me like try to Google or figure out or whatever.
Put the rose inside and then find out that it's not.
This not where it's supposed to
better
go.
For her to be equipped, right? Empowered. Education empowers.
Yes,
so,
yes. And I always, any sex conversation we have, I say like, all right, like, when you feel like you're ready, like even when she said like, Mommy, can you show me how to use a tampon? Yes, when you think you're ready, let me know when you think you're ready, and then we will go over that, because my mom never showed me how to use a damn tampon.
Right.
Like,
you're
not sticking nothing in you.
To use it because it would take my virginity. Right? I was not allowed to use a tampon because that was unholy.
Yes,
Christian girls wear pads.
Yeah, like a lot of women deal with that very early, because the narrative is, if I let you stick a tampon in you, you're gonna want to stick something else.
All kinds of other stuff up there, right?
Well, guess what? I stuck something else in there before I ever used a tampon.
It did not stop me.
It didn't stop.
Sure didn't stop me.
So here we are now, and I'm teaching myself how to use a tampon. So I definitely I kind of want to talk about how you balance and navigate, because again, what we do is sex work.
Yeah.
It's valuable, it's important work, and there are so many people that feel all of this shame as it relates to their bodies. Of course, we've done work to kind of, get any blockages that we have, healed and continue.
We are always doing work. Yeah. Right? Like, I see a therapist and an SCP. Like I am in process, and I share that with the people that I sit with and support all the time. I'm like, I am not asking of you anything that I do not on a regular basis do for myself.
Yes, definitely. How are you finding like that balance? Any challenges that have kind of emerged, anything that you've learned on this journey for yourself? Whether it be, because I'm not sure if you became a sex educator before you became a sex educator before you became a mom.
Yeah.
So I was a mom already, and I didn't know. I still didn't have the amount of knowledge that I've been able to kind of get in the last 2.5-3 years is so great. But you've been doing this for a while. So like, let's kind of talk about that.
Yeah. Well, and I think because of how I grew up and because the conversation was like so shut down and there wasn't that space, that safe, encouraging space where my normal curiosity could just be and I could ask questions, I started going to resources on my own. Like I remember being at the library and I would wait until my mom, who was easily distracted because there were 7 of us, so I'd like wait for her to be distracted by the younger 5, and I would like dip off down the aisle and I would find every book I could find about sex, I would look up every word in the dictionary that I knew about sex to see like what the descriptions were and what the things were. I would pull out books that had pictures, anatomy, like all the things, because I wanted to know. I'm like, I want to know what the big deal is. I want to know why nobody wants me to know. Like, it must be important. If this much emphasis is put on not doing it, then I'm missing something pretty vital. And so that education, I mean, it has been a lifelong, like, education process. And I think right now, what is more challenging, if it is that I went through this period of just kind of, I mean, blissfully, like in your face, like with my sexuality and sex education and, anal 101 classes and just all the things, and like loved it, was so fun. And I'm still so passionate about that. I'm passionate about the work that I do, and talk about being a multifaceted person. Like, I ride horses and help train horses for a special needs program. Like I'm writing a book. I, write poetry. I enjoy being a mother and playing spy with walkie-talkies. And like, there's all of these parts of me that are not just my sexuality.
Yeah.
And I feel like people in our position, it's very easy for people to be like, this, like, you're the sex lady. Basically, you're a sex lady, right? And so I think this past year or two has really been about me feeling into, like, giving myself permission to not be sexy if I don't feel like being sexy, to not embody this in a specific way that people kind of expect you to do it. Like, for a long time, my content creation was like me in lingerie with deep thoughts in the comments, right? Like, and that was great and I enjoyed it. And now I'm like, I want to walk around dressed like a homeless person writing poetry, that's my business. Like, I get to do that. Like, this is mine. It's for me whenever I want to tap into it. And I don't have to tap into it all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think this has been that journey where it's like, I love tapping into it. I love tapping into it with my partner. I love tapping into it when I go out with girlfriends so that they can like get on my level and get that energy.
Like, oh, let's so rub this up on you. Yeah.
Like, let me just give you some of that. It's like I carry it in a vial around my neck. It's there all the time. But like, what is it like to not be doing that all the time? What is it like to not be leading with my sexuality? I fought so hard to have it, and now that I really have it, it's like, what is it like to not lead with that all the time? Just for me.
Yeah, and I think that's true, authentic, pure confidence, because it's not something that you have to lead with necessarily. It's like, all right, if I gotta pull out the big guns, then I know what
I will. Or if I want to.
Yeah.
I just want a little shock and awe. Like, I can do that.
Yeah, I definitely think the on your terms part is so key, because oftentimes what we see is women struggling to they can't do things on their terms because they don't know how to tap into it to begin with.
Right.
So once you are able to tap into that kind of liberated version of yourself, that empowerment when it comes to your sexual agency, now you can say like, you know what? I have fully unlocked that. Yeah. And if I feel like it, you might see
it's not
it.
really novel anymore, and not in a negative way. I think it's beautiful. I think that is a deeper layer of integration in terms of, I can now harness this, like, ultimately sex energy, life force energy, eros. Like, I can harness that and I can use it on whatever I want.
Yes.
I don't have to do it in this one way. And I'm also it's not something I'm performing.
It's not performative.
Right.
Yep.
And so that's another piece of it, is that people then they like start to expect it. And it's like, well, you're like, this is like your deal. And I'm like, not today. It's not. Like,
yeah.
This is my deal when I want it to be my deal. But like, I don't owe anyone my tits on a platter. Like, I pull them out when I want to.
Yeah.
Like, I don't owe anyone showing up in this one dimension.
Yeah.
Nobody has a right to that.
Yeah.
And so I think just feeling into that and feeling good, like building it in a way that feels really good. Because I still, like, my work is so important and I love empowering people, and I'm constantly having these conversations. I think the difference between my 20s and my 30s is, like, in my 20s I was showing sexuality, and in my 30s I'm doing sexuality. Like, I'm being sexuality versus just show.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell I was doing in my 20s. It was something.
Were rough,
it was
but
I was not doing the sex right. I was not doing it right. I was figuring it out. I feel like you don't really know what you're doing until 30s. And then, like, of course, we're different because, like, we became educators. So it's like we have a totally different route as well. But sexual.
I also think people don't think about how, like, I had figured out sex for my body at, like, 25 to 28, whatever. And then I had a baby.
And you got to figure it out all over again.
And I had to figure it out again.
Yeah.
Where I was like, oh, stuff that I used to love, like, I can't fucking stand now. And, like, stuff that I never was interested in, I am now, like, the most interested in.
Same.
Right? And
Same.
so it was that was really scary. There was parts of that was scary because I felt so powerful in my body and in my sexuality pre-having a baby. And then being pregnant, for me, I know everyone has a different experience, but I felt like a stranger in my body, and that was terrifying. I felt vulnerable. I felt like a sitting duck. Like, I was like, oh, I have this, like, thing that's super, like, fragile and like a bomb strapped to me, and it could go off at any time, right? And so until I got my body back, like, until she no longer needed the resource of my physical body, I couldn't really, it was hard to be like, okay, who am I? Like, again, like, what do I like? What do I need? And so that was a very interesting and intense kind of, like, initiation into motherhood. And then finding myself on the other side and tapping back into the sexuality, figuring out what feels good for me now, and being willing and being courageous enough to keep asking those questions and to keep being curious and to keep evolving my own understanding of myself and what I like.
Yeah, I definitely think that is, like, the hugest takeaway is that you never stop learning yourself through sex, because whether you have babies or not, your body is going to change. Our bodies are literally changing. Like, the body I have now is not the body I had 5 years ago. It's not the body I'm going to have in 5 years. So you have to constantly keep exploring your new body over and over and over again, and figuring out what is pleasurable to that body, what feels good emotionally, mentally, what turns you on, what doesn't turn you on anymore. I used to hate people touching my nipples. I felt nothing. No, like, it wasn't like they were, like, hypersensitive or anything. It's just like it meant it was so stupid. It felt so childish for someone to, like, have their mouth on my titty. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, there's somewhere else. If you go a little lower, you can put your mouth there. Like, sucking on my titties did absolutely nothing for me. And I promise you, if you would have looked at my face, I was like,
you're like, to the main event.
If you spend too much time at my titties, I promise you're going to annoy me. It's so childish. But then I got them pierced, and I was like, oh my God, this is fun. So I had to, again, like, you have to continue to learn your body and what's pleasurable to it. Because now I like it. And they're not even pierced anymore. And I like it now. So, to anyone that is listening, male, female, however you identify, you are going to continue to go through changes in life. You're going to continue to have sexual experiences, and you're going to have to continue to explore yourself through those sexual experiences. I think it's super important that you guys give yourself grace and give yourself permission to actually explore it. Don't be out here feeling shameful, because y'all not even slutty enough to be feeling no shame. I'm not gonna hold y'all not out here being slutty enough for me. So before we wrap things up, what are, like, some key takeaways? What would you like the audience to leave with?
I mean, I think lean into resources, right? Like, we both, like, even though we are a resource each ourselves, we are constantly reading and listening and learning from each other. I just learned a dick sucking trick from you a couple weeks ago that I have not forgot. And my husband ain't forgot it either. I can tell you that right now. Listen, like, I'm like, I do this for a living, and that fellatio stuff comes in really handy or tonguey or whatever. So, like, listen, learning new things every day. Like, just keep your mind open. Just be open to new things. Be open to trying things again that you maybe have already tried and you've already judged them and you thought you wouldn't like them, but then you do. I mean, thinking about how ridiculous and silly we were in our early 20s, not knowing shit and having all these rules. For some reason, I was really hung up on, like, only complete slut bags have anal, and that was my, like, thing.
I like it.
Oh, I fucking love anal. Listen, I would be the one who I'd be like, I'll do everything but that. That's disrespectful, right? And then now I am like an anal evangelist. I'm like, everybody should have anal, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just so, you just never know. You never know when you're going to discover something new or when something old is going to feel new. Like, you don't know. And I think it's just important to, do that in a way that feels safe for you. Like, overriding your discomfort and to learn things or try things, like, that's only going to set you back ultimately. So I'm not telling anyone to, like, go out and do things that they don't feel comfortable doing, but, like, look for spaces that are judgment-free, that are shame-free, where people are embodying this kind of emotional and physical safety to learn about these things. Like, find that friend that you can ask questions to, share that podcast, listen to your podcast and share it. It's like, if you don't got to say those things. Somebody's out there saying them. Just forward it on.
Yeah, definitely. And making sure that you understand the why.
Yeah.
Understand why you feel the way you feel towards everything, right? Because once you really get down to the root of why you have certain ideologies, what you will find, if you haven't already done the work, what you will find is that those ideologies are not your own. They were placed there.
Yeah.
And that is, you're doing your sexual agency a disservice. You are doing your pleasure a disservice when you just accept what other people have told you and say, like, I don't have to figure it out. Like, no, I have to figure it out because this is my body and I want it to be pleasured in a way that makes sense for my body. So, guys,
and shout out to the moms. Like, I love all of y'all queens who, like, did not choose to have kids. Love that. Respect that. Those of you who did, like, your sexiness, your pleasure, your embodiment, like, that didn't end when you had kids. Like, you can be a damn good mom and be a freak in the streets, like you in the sheets or reverse, whatever
y'all doing, wherever you want to be freaking,
like wherever you want to do that is just fine. So I don't want. It makes me deeply sad, like to see mothers who are questioning, like, their desirability, or even, like, they feel that they need permission, so, like, if you need a permission slip, Jody and I are here to, like,
that fupa ain't gonna stop that ass from getting ate. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Oh man, let the people know where they can find you.
Well, because I hate the internet a lot, I'm not on there that often, but I do have an Instagram account that you can follow me on, Christin.Henke. I mostly post horses and poetry there, but every now and then I share resources.
Yeah, I be reading your poetry. I like it.
Thank you. You can send me a DM. I'm trying to show up with all of my facets there, not just, if you scroll far enough, you can find the lingerie pics if you want. But,
I scroll.
They're good. Yeah, same. Same, girl. Same. You can stalk. That's fine. Keep the DMs respectful, but it's all good. But that I'm like an old school. I'm like, you can email me, Christin@ChristinHenke.com. I will write back. I love to
and I'll definitely leave your contact in the show notes of this episode. Thank you for joining us for this episode. I think we had an amazing conversation. I laughed a lot. So, this was good. Guys, if you are listening, you know that the Hard or Soft show is on tour with myself and Terry Roseland being the openers with our Freaky Friday collaboration series. So make sure y'all getting y'all tickets to the show. And let me know what y'all think about this rebrand. So
right Nutter Butters.
Yeah,
Go forth.
Yeah. So that's how we get. That's how we
get yours.
Yes. So that's all I got for y'all. We out.
Bye. Oh my goodness.
Thanks for tuning in to Her None Matters. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share the pleasure with others. Follow us on Instagram at Her None Matters to stay updated on everything we have going on. Remember, pleasure is power. Go out there and own yours. Catch you next time.